Hey friends, welcome back to Prepping with Sarge. Today we're going to talk about 10 crops that you should be thinking about for the fall and why you need to be starting to think about your fall planting now. Stay with me now. All right, welcome back. I haven't done the punch shot in a while. So if you watched the live stream on Friday, in the second half of the live stream, we started to talk about this. I'm going to repeat those 10 crops now, and then we're going to get into a little bit more detail. We were just kind of ran out of time because I was talking about some other fun stuff that night. So let's get right into this. And by the way, if you're looking for some fall seeds, the seed company that I usually work with, the seed company that I recommend for my audience is Pine Tree Garden Seeds, and their website is www.superseeds.com. If you use coupon code SARGE10, you will get 10% off your orders of $20 or more. They're also on Instagram. If you friend them over on Instagram, please tell them Prepping with Sarge sent you. All right, so let's talk about what are these 10 crops that Sarge recommends for your fall garden. First one is kale. Kale obviously grows very easily in cooler weather. It actually prefers cooler weather, and it grows all throughout the United States. So even if you're in very dry climates, you should do well with growing kale in the fall and winter time. Just might need to give it a little bit more water than we would need to give them here in South Carolina. Next one is spinach, which also very, very easy, cool weather crop. It actually prefers the cold weather, and it's going to taste a little bit better after you get that first frost. Next one is carrots. Now, I personally have not had a lot of success with carrots. One thing I do know is that you really want to make sure your soil is nice and soft so that it can grow and develop into nice big carrots, but that is also a fall crop. Next one is radishes. Now, I'm going to put a link for a radish video up here that I think you'll kind of find fun. Radishes are fun, and I usually plant a spring crop, but you definitely can grow them a second time again in the fall. In my video that I show you up here, you're going to find that I did this little experiment. I just left my radishes in the ground for almost a full year, and the thing is giant. It's like a 2-pound radish. Now, obviously, you don't want to eat it when it's that big. It was just kind of a fun experiment. Number 5 is lettuce. Lettuce is a great fall crop, and again, it also is another one that tastes kind of good. When you get a little bit of cool nights to it, actually adds to the flavor there. Number 6 is broccoli. Now, broccoli is one that I've also struggled with. If you have any tips down below, let me know, let my audience know. But broccoli is another one that's good to plant in the fall. On a related note, broccoli's good friend cauliflower also can be planted in the fall. Number 8, cabbage. Cabbage is a great fall crop. I recommend you go for the varieties that kind of roll in on themselves and that are hardy. Get some nice hardy cabbages, but they should do well as long as you plant them enough weeks out before the first frost. We're going to talk about that in just a second. All right, these next two are not really fall crops. They're actually more spring crops, but I recommend that you plant them in the fall, and that is strawberries and garlic. Now, the reason I recommend that is both of these actually do well if you plant them in the fall. Garlic especially, it's recommended to be planting it in the fall, and then let it overwinter. Let those roots develop for a couple weeks before that first frost comes in. Let them overwinter, and then in the springtime is when they're really going to start to do well. You might even get your first few strawberries in that first spring, although some people say you should pinch off those flowers and strawberries to encourage more plant growth, and that in the second and third year of those strawberry plants, you're really going to do much better. The garlic, you're going to harvest late May or early June. Okay, so let's talk about the frost. You need to know what the expected first frost for your area is. And remember, it's just an estimate. It's going to vary from year to year. So it's just like a historical average. And then whatever you are going to plant, let's say that you're going to plant radishes, what you want to do is you're going to want to look on those seed packets, and it's going to tell you somewhere on those seed packets how many weeks to harvest, and then you're going to count back from that. So example, radishes, some radishes are ready in only 28 days. So, and let's say that the frost date here in South Carolina is mid-December, I'm going to backtrack at least 28 days, but honestly, I would give yourself a couple extra weeks of padding there. So I may plant those in like, say, early November, maybe even late October, and I would get one more good harvest before that final frost comes in, that first frost comes in. Soil preparation. So before you do your planting in the fall, it's a good idea to just check your soil, pull up any weeds, dig around in it a little bit. I'm actually not a big fan of tilling unless it's your first year of gardening. You can just kind of dig in there a little bit, a couple inches deep, see if there's any roots underneath it that you weren't aware of. Pull those up and add a little bit of nice organic material, either store-bought compost or even better if you can make your own compost. Just be aware that compost, if you're doing it correctly, you probably don't want to use it the first year that you make it. You want it to age a little bit. And the reason for that is compost actually gets really, really hot as it's breaking down in that first year. So most of the time you're going to be better off to just take that compost, let it sit somewhere for a year. Periodically you're kind of rotating it with a pitchfork, wetting it down if it's the summertime, and then you're usually good to use it the next year. Some people wait 2 years to use theirs. That's up to you. If it's a small amount, people can get away with, putting some of the compost right into the garden bed that's not, completely broken down yet. So you'll have to experiment with that on your own, but in general, at least a year old. As far as watering, it's going to depend on your area. Again, if you're in a very dry area, you probably are going to have to water. Most parts of the United States are going to get enough rainfall in the fall to that you may not even have to water at all. Just keep an eye on your plants. If they're starting to look dried out or droopy, that means that they probably need a little bit of water. I tend to try to err on the side of a little bit less water rather than a little bit more water. You can overwater your plants, and that causes some other problems, actually encourages some diseases and things like that. So just be aware of it. I kind of just keep an eye on them every day, watching them. And if they're starting to look like, they're sad and droopy like that, then you need to add a little bit more water. As far as frost protection goes, now a lot of plants can take a very, very light frost. There's a product that I recommend called Blankets, and I've reviewed that before. I'll put a link to the review up here. You can, if you don't want to use that particular product, you can improvise, using sheets or some other things. I generally recommend that you use a breathable fabric. So I'm not a big fan of putting like hard non-breathable, non-permeable plastics on top of my plants. Maybe other people have done that and they've had success. That's okay. Let me know in the comments if you've had success with that. But I use a product called Blankets. And the idea is if you're going to get a frost, just cover them up. And then the next day when the sun comes out, you're going to uncover them. And you can extend your growing period a little bit too with this. So if you happen to plan for your frost date and then you get your first frost 2 weeks before you thought you were going to get it, this can probably get you through, especially if it's a mild frost. Now, if it's a really deep, hard frost, it may not be enough. I've certainly lost a few plants over the years to situations like that. But for most frosts, those blankets are going to work really well. As far as pests, you generally are going to see less insect damage in the fall. You may have some issues with other type of pests, such as squirrels or raccoons or possums and things like that, if you have a lot of those in your area, because they're getting ready for the winter, so they're probably trying to bulk up and store some food and things like that. So you may get a little bit more of that kind of thing. But as far as the insect damage, that tends to be less in the fall because of the cooler nights. All right, one last little consideration is when you're making your choices on your seeds, you want to plan to plant for seeds that and varieties that do well in your area. In the live stream, I talked about how this year I made a mistake with garlic, and hardneck garlic is generally recommended for cooler areas. I planted hardneck garlic here, and we had a very, very mild winter, and I think that's what caused me to lose my entire garlic crop. So this year I'm switching to softneck garlic. But if you go to like a website like superseeds.com, just read the descriptions of the seeds carefully, and it will tell you like what areas it does well for. Know your zone, what your growing zone is. Check that. Sometimes you can get away with growing a little bit outside of your zone area, but it's going to be more challenging. Just things to be aware of. But try to pick varieties that grow well in your area. And another good little tip here that I'll throw in with that is go to your local farmers markets and talk to the vendors there. And if you see like, this garlic that they're growing and selling is really, really good, ask them what variety it is. And maybe you even, if it's organic, you can use their garlic to start your garlic, just as an example. Or if they've got heirloom tomatoes and they say, yeah, we didn't grow these near any other tomatoes, you might be able to save those seeds for next year, just as an example for your spring crops, right? So talk to your locals, farmers in your area that have a lot of experience. Ask them what varieties they have had good success with, and that's going to be a good indication of what's probably going to do well for your little area as well. Hey folks, if you enjoyed this at all, please consider giving me a thumbs up. Don't forget to check in the description for links and discount codes. And if you're brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Keep planting your seeds, keep stacking your silver. This is Prepping with Sarge.